Let's get to our market week review. Nigeria's biggest financial supermarket, FBN Holdings, have been asked by a federal high court to suspend its annual shareholders meeting due next week, just as Access Bank secures a London court order against the assets of Mr. ABC Orjiako, a co-founder of Seplat Energy, listed on both Lagos and London stock exchanges. Let's wrap up the market week now with these and other headlines as I turn to Group CEO at Carry Asset Management, Justin Chukwu. Good evening. Thanks for making the time to join in on the show tonight.
Good evening, Boston. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. These are two, let's talk chat very quickly to two of the top stories coming through. FBN Holdings, the biggest financial supermarket, Seplat Energy in London and Lagos exchanges. So these are two of the biggest companies on the Nigerian market. Let's start with FBN Holdings. What do you make of the court order stopping the annual shareholders meetings next week?
Well, Boston, is not good for the bank. In the first place, the annual general meeting is coming quite late. We're already talking of August. Virtually all the other banks have actually had their annual general meetings and paid out dividend to shareholders. So for shareholders of First Bank, this is not a pleasant piece of news. But beyond that, there are also other critical decisions that First Bank is about to take or was about to take at that annual general meeting that have to be now put on hold. So in effect, it's not in the interest of the bank, it's not good for shareholders, and it's not good for the banking system that we're going to go through this kind of legal interventions in the corporate governance of one of the biggest banks in the country.
FBN Holdings, by the way, is FBN Holdings, not actually First Bank. So how do you think investors should react to the latest development, by the way, as far as pricing this particular company, financial holding company, FBN Holdings, is concerned?
You know, in the first place, you have to recognize that FBN Holding is a parent company of First Bank Nigeria Limited. First Bank Nigeria Limited is no longer quoted. So for shareholders of First Bank PLC, they're now shareholders of FBN Holdings. So they can only get their dividend and other benefits when the FBN Holdings hold their annual general meeting. So that's the reason why it has to impact them. But as for investors, like I mentioned earlier, this is not good news for them. In the first instance, I had mentioned that benefits payment have all been received by virtually all shareholders of banks in the country for the last financial year. But first, FBN Holding was about to pay the benefits to shareholders after the AGM, and that AGM had been put on hold. The good thing is it was put on hold by an interim order, which the substantive issue will come up on the 16th of August. So hopefully that substantive issue will be dealt with, and the court will lift that interim injunction and allow the bank to hold its annual general meeting.
Do you think there's going to be any knee-jerk reaction when the market resumes on Monday as far as FBN Holdings shares concerned?
You know, that judgment was given on August 9th, which was 2 days ago. So if the shareholders were to react, they would have responded to it by now. The market has closed and there was no major response to it. So I don't think shareholders are so panicky or panicked about the outcome of that court injunction. Like I also said, it's an interim injunction that will ordinarily expire when the substantive issue comes up on the 16th of August.
What about the order secured by Access Bank against co-founder of Seplat Energy, Mr. ABC Orjiako? Or what's your take on that?
You know, for those of us in the financial services industry or in the we are familiar with the fact that there's been a running battle between Dr. ABC Orjiako and Access Bank as it relates to his debt or a claim that Access Bank has had on him. But the good thing I also have to recognize that it is not against Seplat, which Seplat had clearly stated in their publication to investors. It is a personal issue between Dr. ABC Orjiako and Access Bank. And clearly, it doesn't affect the operation of Seplat. Seplat still remains the largest gas producer in the country in terms of commercialization of gas in the country. They still remain the biggest upstream quoted company in the country, quoted on the exchange of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange, particularly quoted on the US Stock Exchange. So I don't think it will impact on their operation, but clearly it's a caveat for anybody who wants to deal in the shares of ABC Orjiako in Seplat or in any other institution as was reported in that publication by Seplat to NGX. So for me, as an investor, it doesn't in any way dilute my interest in Seplat as an upstream oil and gas operator in the country. But clearly, any publication of this nature is not good for the public image of the company, neither is it good for public image of Dr. ABC Orjiako.
Of course, I'm sure you saw that very heavy transaction today on Seplat, 3.54 billion in naira value. Of course, like you said, it's not good on the image. Being a co-founder of this very iconic Nigerian energy company listed on the London Stock Exchange, I think it's the first Nigerian energy company to be listed on such a big exchange anywhere in the world. But let's move on and chat very quickly to central bank's annual financials, which are now released over almost an 8-year period. Are you encouraged by these disclosures that we now see, the financials of the Central Bank of Nigeria on the street?
Well, the way I look at it is that it was absolutely necessary that Central Bank publish the account, because they really cannot be in a position to enforce the banks to make sure they submit the account, the audited account, 3 months after the end of their financial year, and take measures to sanction banks that fail to publish their audited accounts. So you really cannot sit in judgment on an issue that you are a consistent breach of. So it was for their own interest, for their own public image, they needed to publish the account. But in terms of looking at the account, remember that Central Bank's primary objective is not to make profit. I saw a profit of 103 billion, which is inconsequential if you want to compare it to the profit made by other banks. If you look at even the first bank we were discussing earlier, their half-year profit was more than 200 billion. So, but Central Bank is not measured, was not set up for profit objectives. The key thing are they executing their mandate, price stability in the economy, financial system stability. When you talk of maintaining price stability, you're going to be managing inflation, managing exchange rate, managing interest rate. The key, those are the measures which they are appraised and assessed. The reporting profit for me was not the issue, but what I did was to look at the structure of their balance sheet, look at their liabilities and look at their assets. And looking at their liabilities, two things come out strongly. Their obligations to dollar obligations in terms of the swap they did and the security lending they did with JP Morgan. So that for me sends me a message of what is actually our net reserve. And those two figures, if you sum them up, is about $13.8 billion. So if you take that away from our gross reserve, probably you are looking at a reserve that's about half of what we are currently quoting. And that for me is the substance that we need to take away from this publication.
Okay, so just give me one sentence, one liner. What's your take on the market for next week? We're getting into the 3rd week of August, by the way.
Well, the market will take a cue from what happens in the currency market and in the money market. We've seen the central bank come up with a rate of about 9% for T-bills, a stop rate of about 9% for the 364-day bills. And that will send a signal that probably the central bank is inconsistent when it comes to interest rate management. So investors who we are selling down equities to hope to go into fixed income instrument may hold back their sell down, and which is why we've seen a market gain in the past 2 days. So I think we should expect the market to take a cue from what happens in the money market and what happens in the FX market. The instability in the foreign exchange market has created a lot of concern, which is making people to sometimes want to offload local currency instruments and take positions in foreign currency instruments. So those are the things that will guide the market in the coming week.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great time over there. Johnson Chukwu, this Group CEO at Carry Asset Management. Thank you. We appreciate your contributions as always here on Arise Exchange. Do have a great weekend as well.